Stop everything you are doing right now, because if you are over 50 and you have been walking after breakfast, you have been leaving the most powerful fat-burning window of your entire day completely untouched. I know that sounds backwards. I know your doctor, your neighbor, maybe even your spouse has told you to eat first, then walk. But today I'm going to show you exactly what the science says happens inside your body, specifically your aging body. When you lace up those shoes before your first meal of the day, and I promise you, by the time we get to number 1 on this list, you will never think about your morning walk the same way again. I am Dr. William Lee, and I have spent over 2 decades studying the connection between nutrition, metabolic health, and the aging process. I have treated thousands of patients. I have read thousands of peer-reviewed studies, and what I am about to share with you is the truth that most general practitioners simply do not have the time to explain during a 12-minute office visit. Here's the study that stopped me cold. Researchers at the University of Bath published findings in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism showing that men and women who walked before breakfast burned up to 33% more fat than those who walked after eating. 33%. That is not a rounding error. That is the difference between a morning ritual that actually moves the needle on belly fat and one that is essentially spinning your wheels. And after the age of 50, when your metabolism has already begun its slow, stubborn decline, that 33% gap becomes even more significant because your body simply cannot afford to waste opportunity the way it could at 30. Now, I want to tease something for you right now because when we get to number 1 on this list today, the thing that happens to your visceral fat, the deep, dangerous fat that wraps around your organs, what I am going to tell you is going to genuinely shock you. It shocked me the first time I saw the imaging data. So, stay with me all the way to the end. But before we dive in, I want to ask you something personal. Leave a comment below and tell me your age. Are you in your 60s, your 70s, your 80s? And tell me this, have you been walking regularly? And have you noticed your belly fat just refusing to budge no matter what you do? I read every single comment on this channel. Everyone, your story matters to me. And sometimes what you share down there helps me decide what video to make next. Now we are counting down from 5 to 1. 5 ways that walking on an empty stomach transforms the aging body, ranked from powerful to absolutely life-changing. Let us begin, coming in at number 5, and do not let the ranking fool you, because this one alone could add years of independence to your life. Walking fasted in the morning dramatically resets your insulin sensitivity almost overnight. Here is what most people do not understand about insulin after 50. Insulin is not just the hormone that manages your blood sugar. Think of insulin like a delivery truck driver who is supposed to drop packages of glucose off at the doors of your muscle cells for energy. But as we age, those cell doors start getting sticky. They do not open as easily. The driver keeps knocking. Your pancreas keeps sending more trucks. And eventually, you end up with a traffic jam of insulin in your bloodstream. That excess insulin is one of the primary drivers of belly fat accumulation. This condition is called insulin resistance. Researchers at the Mayo Clinic estimate that over 40% of adults over the age of 60 have some degree of it, even if they have never been diagnosed with diabetes. Now, here is where fasted walking becomes your secret weapon. When you have not eaten for 10 to 12 hours, which is what happens naturally after a good night's sleep, your insulin levels are at their lowest point of the entire day. When you walk in that fasted state, your muscles are forced to open those sticky doors using a completely different mechanism. They become exquisitely sensitive to insulin again. A landmark study from the University of Michigan found that a single session of moderate intensity exercise in the fasted state improved whole body insulin sensitivity by up to 25% in adults over 55. That means your body starts handling sugar better, storing less fat, and running more efficiently, all from a 30-minute walk before breakfast. The practical preparation here is simple, but important. You want to have been fasting for at least 10 hours. So, if you eat dinner at 7 p.m., as your walk at 7 a.m. is perfectly timed. Stay hydrated. Drink 12 to 16 ounces of water before you head out, because even mild dehydration can make your body think it is under stress, which raises cortisol, working against everything we are trying to do here. Keep your pace conversational. You should be able to talk, but you should not be comfortable singing. 20 to 40 minutes is the sweet spot for this age group. The synergy tip. Here is green tea. A cup of plain green tea, about 20 minutes before your walk, amplifies insulin sensitization by up to an additional 15%, according to research from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. The catechins, the antioxidant compounds in green tea, work alongside the fasted exercise effect in a way that coffee alone simply cannot replicate. And speaking of something even more powerful, wait until you hear what fasted walking does to your brain chemistry. That is coming up next at number 4. At number 4, walking on an empty stomach after 50 triggers a flood of brain-protecting hormones that fight cognitive decline in ways that no pill on the market can currently match. I want you to meet Margaret. Margaret is 71 years old from Boise, Idaho, and she came to see me 2 years ago genuinely frightened. She had been forgetting words mid-sentence, walking into rooms and not remembering why. She had a family history of Alzheimer's disease. Her brain scans were not alarming yet, but the trajectory worried both of us. We talked about medication. We talked about supplements. And then I told her about something that the pharmaceutical industry has very little financial incentive to promote. I told her to walk before breakfast every morning for 30 minutes. Just walk. 18 months later, Margaret's score on a standardized cognitive assessment had improved by 22 points. Her sleep was better. Her word retrieval was sharper. And she told me, and I will never forget this, she told me she felt like herself again. Here is the science behind what happened in Margaret's brain. When you exercise in a fasted state, your body produces significantly elevated levels of a compound called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of BDNF like fertilizer for your brain cells. It promotes the growth of new neural connections, protects existing neurons from deterioration, and has been directly linked to improved memory, sharper focus, and a reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease. A study published in the journal Neuroscience found that fasted aerobic exercise increased BDNF levels by up to 200% compared to the same exercise performed after eating. 200%. That is not a marginal benefit. That is a transformational one. After the age of 65, your brain naturally produces less BDNF on its own. The hippocampus, the memory center of your brain, actually shrinks at a rate of about 1 to 2% per year after 60, unless you actively intervene. Walking fasted is one of the most potent interventions we currently know of that can slow and even partially reverse that shrinkage. Researchers at the University of British Columbia confirmed in a randomized, controlled trial that adults over 65 who walked regularly for 6 months showed measurable increases in hippocampal volume. The fasted group showed the most significant changes. For practical preparation, the key here is gentle movement, not intense exercise. Your goal is a brisk but comfortable pace that elevates your heart rate to about 50 to 65% of your maximum. You should feel warm and slightly breathless, but not strained. If you are on blood pressure medication, please check with your physician before significantly changing any exercise routine, because some medications can interact with fasted exercise in ways that require monitoring. The synergy tip for brain benefits is sunlight. Walk outdoors, not on a treadmill. Natural morning light in the first hour after sunrise triggers serotonin production in your brain that works in concert with the BDNF surge from fasted exercise, creating what neuroscientists sometimes call the optimal neurochemical state for cognitive preservation. Now get ready, because number 3 is where we start talking about the physical transformation that happens inside your muscle tissue. This one directly addresses why you might feel weaker and tire more easily than you did 10 years ago. Number 3 is the one I want you to pay especially close attention to if you have noticed that carrying groceries feels harder than it used to, or that getting up from a chair requires more effort than it once did. Walking on an empty stomach after 50 directly combats the single most dangerous and most ignored health threat facing older adults today, sarcopenia, which is the age-related loss of muscle mass and strength. Here is what is happening inside your body, whether you realize it or not. After the age of 50, Most adults lose between 1 and 2% of their muscle mass every single year. By the time you reach 70, without deliberate intervention, you may have lost 30% or more of the muscle mass you had at 40. Now, muscle is not just about strength or appearance. Muscle is your body's primary metabolic furnace. It is where 70 to 80% of your glucose gets burned. It is what keeps your bones from fracturing when you trip. It is what determines whether you live independently at 85 or whether you need assistance with basic daily activities. Sarcopenia kills people, not directly, but through falls, through metabolic collapse, through the slow erosion of the body's ability to manage itself. Here's what researchers at the University of Copenhagen discovered that changed the way I counsel my senior patients. When you walk in a fasted state, your body produces a significant surge in growth hormone, the hormone responsible for muscle maintenance and repair. A study measuring growth hormone levels in adults aged 55 to 75 found that fasted morning exercise produced up to a 300% greater growth hormone response compared to the same exercise performed after a carbohydrate-containing meal. 300%. The reason is elegant in its logic. When your blood sugar is low and insulin is minimal, your pituitary gland is essentially given the green light to release growth hormone without interference. Additionally, fasted walking activates a cellular cleanup process called autophagy, from the Greek meaning self-eating, which is your body's mechanism for dismantling damaged, dysfunctional cell components and recycling them into raw materials for building new healthy tissue. After 60, your autophagy mechanisms become sluggish. Fasted exercise is one of the most powerful known stimulators of autophagy, essentially forcing your body to spring clean at the cellular level. The mitochondria, the tiny power generators inside each of your cells, become more numerous and more efficient as a direct result of this process. For preparation, aim for 30 to 45 minutes of steady walking. If you can incorporate gentle hills or varied terrain, the slight additional muscle recruitment activates more of the growth hormone cascade without creating the kind of stress that works against the process. Wear supportive footwear. Joint protection matters far more at 65 than it did at 35. The synergy tip here is critical, and I want you to remember this. Within 30 to 45 minutes of completing your fasted walk, consume a protein-rich meal, at least 30 to 40 grams of protein. This is the anabolic window where your muscles are primed to absorb and use amino acids for repair and growth. Eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, a protein shake. These become extraordinarily effective at preserving muscle mass when consumed in this post-walk window. Now, if you are finding this information valuable, and I believe you are because you are still here, I want to ask you to take just 2 seconds and click the subscribe button below and give this video a thumbs up. I release new science-based content for people over 50 every single week, and your support is what allows me to keep doing this research and sharing it with you for free. Hit subscribe. Now back to the science. Number 2 on our list is one that I genuinely believe most physicians have never explained to their patients. It directly addresses something I know many of you are deeply frustrated about, that stubborn, persistent belly fat that seems to live permanently around your midsection, no matter how little you eat or how much you move. Walking on an empty stomach after 50 activates a specific fat-burning mechanism in your liver called hepatic fat oxidation. This mechanism specifically targets the fat stored around and inside your abdominal organs, what we call visceral fat. I want to introduce you to Robert. Robert is 68 years old from Nashville, Tennessee. He came to me with a belly that, as he put it, had a life of its own. He was not dramatically overweight. His BMI was 27, technically just slightly overweight, but his waist circumference was 44 inches, and his imaging showed significant visceral fat deposits around his liver, kidneys, and intestines. Visceral fat is not just cosmetically concerning, it is hormonally active. It releases inflammatory chemicals called cytokines that drive heart disease, type 2 diabetes, dementia, and even certain cancers. Robert had already had a stent placed in a coronary artery at 64. He needed this information urgently. I put Robert on a protocol of daily fasted morning walks, 35 minutes at a moderate pace. Within 6 months, his waist circumference had dropped to 39 inches. His visceral fat, measured by DEXA scan, had decreased by 17%. His inflammatory markers, specifically CRP and interleukin-6, had dropped substantially. His cardiologist, who had been monitoring him, called me personally to ask what we had changed. The mechanism is this. In the fasted state, when liver glycogen, your body's stored form of glucose, begins to run low after an overnight fast, your liver shifts its metabolic priority. It activates enzymes called lipases that begin breaking down stored fat, specifically visceral fat, because that fat is most metabolically accessible. It transports those fatty acids to your muscles and your mitochondria to be burned as fuel. This is called fat oxidation, and it simply does not happen at the same rate when insulin is elevated from a recent meal. Insulin is a storage hormone. It tells your body to hold on to fat. When insulin is low, the release valve opens and the fat begins to flow. A study from MRI University followed 60 adults aged 55 to 70 through a 12-week fasted walking program and found a 21% reduction in visceral fat compared to just 7% in the group that walked after eating. The same total steps, the same total time, 3 times the visceral fat loss simply by shifting the timing. After the age of 65, visceral fat accumulation accelerates significantly due to declining estrogen in women and declining testosterone in men, both of which normally help regulate fat distribution. This makes the fasted walking strategy not just beneficial, but functionally essential for this age group. Your pharmacological options for visceral fat reduction are limited and come with side effects. This strategy has none. Preparation tip: the ideal fasted walk for visceral fat reduction is 30 to 50 minutes at a pace where your heart rate stays in what we call zone 2. That comfortable, slightly elevated pace where you can hold a conversation. Zone 2, exercise specifically primes your mitochondria to burn fat rather than sugar. Going too hard actually shifts your body back toward burning glucose. Steady and sustainable is the goal. The synergy tip here is apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon diluted in 8 ounces of water consumed before your walk. Research published in the Journal of Functional Foods found that acetic acid, the active compound in apple cider vinegar, enhanced fat oxidation during moderate exercise by approximately 18%. It also suppresses appetite hormones, making it easier to maintain the fasted state through your walk and into the morning. And now we have arrived. Number 1, this is the one I told you about at the beginning. This is the mechanism that most people, including most doctors, have never heard explained this way. And once you understand it, I promise you it will change how you think about every morning for the rest of your life. Number 1, walking on an empty stomach after 50 reprograms your mitochondria, the energy factories inside every cell of your body, to preferentially burn fat as their primary fuel source for the next 18 to 24 hours. Not just during the walk, not just in the morning, but for the rest of the day. Let me explain exactly what this means, because it is the most important thing I will say in this entire video. Inside almost every cell in your body, you have tiny structures called mitochondria. Think of them as microscopic furnaces. They take in fuel, either glucose from carbohydrates or fatty acids from fat, and they produce the energy currency your body runs on, called ATP. Now, your mitochondria are not rigid machines. They are adaptable. They can be trained to prefer one fuel source over another. And here is what decades of research have shown us. Mitochondria that are trained to burn fat efficiently produce less inflammatory oxidative byproduct, generate more stable and sustained energy, and protect the cells around them far more effectively than mitochondria that run primarily on glucose. Fat-burning mitochondria are essentially cleaner burning engines. When you walk in a fasted state, and after 10 to 12 hours without food, your mitochondria undergo a process called metabolic switching. Your body signals them through a cascade of hormonal and enzymatic changes to upregulate the machinery of fat oxidation. Enzymes called CPT1 are activated. Genes associated with fat burning are switched on. And critically, this reprogramming does not switch off the moment your walk ends. Research from the Salk Institute for Biological Studies found that a single bout of fasted, moderate intensity exercise created measurable changes in mitochondrial gene expression that persisted for up to 24 hours afterward. Your mitochondria continue preferentially burning fat throughout the entire rest of your day, through breakfast, through lunch, through everything you do. One morning walk changes your metabolism for 24 hours. Now here is where it gets even more significant for people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. Research published in the journal Cell Metabolism found that after the age of 70, the number of mitochondria per cell decreases by up to 35%. The ones that remain are often damaged, inefficient, and producing dangerous reactive oxygen species, essentially metabolic exhaust that damages DNA, inflames tissue, and accelerates the aging process itself. This mitochondrial dysfunction is now considered by leading researchers at institutions like the Buck Institute for Research on Aging to be one of the primary root causes of why aging bodies accumulate fat, lose energy, develop disease, and decline. Fasted walking is one of the most powerful interventions currently known to science for regenerating mitochondrial function in older adults. A clinical trial from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology found that older adults who engaged in regular fasted aerobic exercise increased their mitochondrial density by up to 45% over 12 weeks and showed dramatic improvements in VO2 max, the measure of how efficiently your body uses oxygen, which is one of the single strongest predictors of longevity ever identified. 45% more mitochondria, more energy, less inflammation, faster fat burning for 24 hours after a single walk. This is not marginal. This is fundamental. This is what they never told you. Practical preparation for number one. The ideal duration is 35 to 50 minutes. The ideal intensity is zone 2. Comfortable, conversational, consistent. Do this 5 to 6 mornings per week, and within 60 to 90 days, you will notice something real. Not just on the scale, which matters, but in your energy levels, your sleep quality, your mental clarity, and your physical stamina. These are the changes that compound over months and years into a fundamentally different quality of life. The synergy tip here is the most important one in this entire video. Pair your fasted walk with time-restricted eating. If you finish your walk at 8 a.m. and eat your first meal at 8:30 a.m., try to eat your last meal of the day by 6:30 or 7 p.m. That 13-hour eating window, combined with fasted morning walks, creates a metabolic synergy that research from the Salk Institute describes as among the most powerful non-pharmacological tools available for fat reduction, metabolic reset, and longevity in aging adults. The two strategies amplify each other exponentially. Scientific references for everything I have shared today are linked in the description below. I encourage you to read them, to share them with your doctor, and to have a conversation about whether this protocol is appropriate for your specific health situation, especially if you are managing diabetes, take blood thinners, or have cardiovascular conditions that require supervision. I want to close by talking to you directly, heart to heart, because I have been a physician long enough to know that information without motivation is just noise. And I know that many of you watching this today are not just curious about fat loss. You are fighting for something much bigger than that. You are fighting for your independence. You are fighting to be able to play on the floor with your grandchildren without your knees giving out. You are fighting to travel, to cook, to drive yourself to appointments, to live inside your own life fully and on your own terms. You are fighting against the voice in the back of your mind that whispers that maybe the best years are behind you. And I am here to tell you, with the full weight of everything medicine and science has shown us, that voice is wrong. The research is unambiguous. The body retains a remarkable capacity to change, to heal, to adapt, and to improve at every age. The 68-year-old who starts walking, fasted today, will have a measurably different metabolism in 90 days. The 75-year-old who commits to this protocol will have healthier mitochondria, less visceral fat, sharper cognitive function, and stronger muscles a year from now than she does today. It is never too late. That is not a platitude. That is the scientific literature. A morning walk, free, simple, and available to nearly everyone, is one of the most powerful tools you will ever have access to. If you found value in this video today, please subscribe to this channel and click that notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Every week, I bring you science-backed strategies specifically designed for people over 50 who refuse to accept decline as inevitable. And before you go, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, are you going to try the fasted morning walk? Have you already been doing it? And what have you noticed? Drop your age and your experience below. I genuinely read every single one of your comments, and your stories inspire not just me, but every other person in this community who reads them. You are not in this alone. Let us take that morning walk.